Today, the very conservative Wall Street Journal editorial board is holding JD Vance accountable while denouncing his leading role in yesterday's White House diplomacy debacle. And I have the full story and much more for you next. I'm going to lead this report by showing perhaps the most bizarre moment of the debacle when a vice president breaks all norms by dressing down a president for not saying thank you. And if you've seen the whole video, you know it's the moment that set Trump off. And on the other side, you'll see Secretary of State Marco Rubio scrambling to defend the indefensible.
You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of times.
No, in this
even
entire
today,
meeting, you said thank
Vice
you.
President Vance was criticizing Zelensky for not saying thank you specifically during that meeting, those 40 to 50 minutes that we were in the Oval Office. But certainly, you know very well, Secretary Rubio, your time as a senator here in Washington, that whenever Zelensky has come to Washington before, he has very much expressed that kind of gratitude. Just listen to this.
Thank you for both financial packages you have already provided us.
Really, all my appreciations from my heart, from the heart of Ukrainians, all Ukrainians. And thank you very much for supporting us, our people.
Thank you, United States. Thank you, America.
Do you think you can make the argument that he hasn't said thank you?
Well, I think the vice president said he hadn't said it today. He hadn't heard it today in that meeting.
So Rubio is saying that 100 thank yous is not enough, and every meeting with Donald Trump should begin with a bit of groveling. Marco, that may be the world that you and Vance live in, but insisting that world leaders repeatedly kiss the ring only reveals the twisted universe that is the Trump White House. Next up is a report from MSNBC that peels back the layers of this stinking onion, and it results in a directive to Vance to shut up. And then I'll share the breaking news from the Wall Street Journal.
Americans are like, why do we care about what happens in Ukraine? Because he's going to take Ukraine. If we just sit back and let him do it, he'll take Ukraine. Then he's going to take the rest of what he believes to be the Soviet Union. He's going to go to the Baltic states. He's going to go to Poland. He's going to go to, this expansion is just going to continue.
How do you have a negotiation between Russia and Ukraine when Ukraine isn't in the room? You won't let them in the room to sit down at the table. So then you invite the president of Ukraine into the Oval Office and you put on this performative, ganging up on him, which was all staged. I mean, everything was going fine. And then JD Vance, who normally, as you know, Simone.
You would not speak.
You will not speak.
Vice President Kamala Harris would have never, after the president answered a question from reporters in the Oval Office, his office.
Thank you.
The vice president, I don't care who the heck you are. You do not jump in and say, let me just say one thing. No, you can shut up because this is my office.
Shut up, JD Vance is something that I can support, and I think the Wall Street Journal agrees too. The bombshell they dropped on the Trump-Vance axis of insanity began with Putin wins the Trump-Zelensky Oval Office spectacle. Vice President Vance starts a public fight that only helps Russia's dictator. Toward the end of his on-camera Oval Office brawl with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday, President Trump quipped that it was great television. He's right about that. But the point of the meeting was supposed to be progress towards an honorable peace for Ukraine, and in the event, the winner was Russia's Vladimir Putin. And then the meeting in front of the world descended into recriminations. The nosedive began with an odd interjection from Vice President JD Vance, who appeared to be defending Mr. Trump's diplomacy, which Mr. Zelensky hadn't challenged. Mr. Zelensky rehearsed the many peace agreements Mr. Putin had shredded and essentially asked Mr. Vance what would be different this time. The article went on to say Mr. Vance dressed down Mr. Zelensky as if he were a child late for dinner, and it's bewildering to see Mr. Trump's allies defending this debacle as some show of American strength. And it closed with, Mr. Trump does not want to be the president who abandoned Ukraine to Vladimir Putin with all the bloodshed and damage to U.S. interests that would result. Mr. Vance won't like to run for president in such a world either. The point that I want to focus on that others have not because there was so much madness baked into that moment is when JD Vance blurted out their disdain for Zelensky appearing with a Democrat governor who was stumping for Kamala Harris at the time.
Even today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
It reminds us of just how petty Trump and Vance are, and that retribution and revenge is a consideration in their negotiation position, a negotiation that, if done sooner rather than later, will save lives. They are emotionally immature and reckless, and if JD Vance runs for president in 2028, I hope this moment haunts him and buries his attempt to keep Trumpism alive. And in closing, I will give Fox News the final word, and surprisingly, the word is fiasco. Watch as they report on Americans giving Vance the business on his very un-American and very disastrous performance.
Following yesterday's fiasco there in the Oval Office with Ukrainian President Zelensky, there's some new video now we have showing the vice president being greeted by protesters holding anti-Vance, pro-Ukraine signs as he makes his way there to Vermont for a ski resort vacation. More protesters met the Vance family outside of the resort, and the family ultimately had to move to an undisclosed location.